Hello everyone and welcome to the Aurora Cup by the NLC. So nice to see you again. My name is Carmeline and I'm here on the analyst desk with Maguire. Hello Maguire.
Hello, Caroline. It's really nice to finally see you. It's really nice to be to here very first time on the NLC broadcast. I'm quite excited for the Aurora Cup because there will be a lot of games played throughout a lot of different league. I mean, not leagues, different divisions. So pretty much we'll get the bunch of the best of the best when it comes to the NLC region, and all of those players featured.
Absolutely. But first, you mentioned the division. Shall we just explain a little bit what this will be about? I think that's a good idea to introduce our viewers to what they're going to be watching today. So essentially, NLC has put together this tournament where 32 teams will take part. And we've got 10 teams from the first division of NLC, 10 teams from the second division, 8 teams from the third division, and 4 teams from a close qualifier. So these teams have been divided in 8 groups, and the top 2 of each group will make it onto the next stage. But I think that one we can explain a little bit later, once that actually happens. And in the meantime, we're going to be discussing this stage where, again, we said 30 teams are going to be taking part. And today, in our stream here in Universe, you will be able to watch Group A, which has several teams. You want to mention them, Maguire?
Yeah, from what I've heard, the NLC official broadcast will be covering the Group H, and we will be responsible for coverage of Group A. So when it comes to the teams that we have here, like you mentioned before, the different brackets means that we will have teams from different level of competition. For example, teams from the first division usually will not be put in the same group, but because there's 10 of them, there will be some groups, of course, with that will include 2 teams from the first division. If I remember correctly, this is the group. This
A,
is the group.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about Group A, but I think I have the notes here when it comes to covering one group with 2 teams. It doesn't really matter. So skipping to Group A, of course, we have Hydras Esports. This is the team that made it to open qualifier, then through open qualifier to close qualifier. Then they dropped 2 games to Cabbage Family, who also qualified for the tournament. But finally, in the end, they won against the Finnish team No Org with an 1-0 scoreline. So they will be joining us in the tournament in the main part of the tournament itself. Of course, then we have Excel Esports, the team that placed 8th in the NLC third division this summer, from what I've seen. Additionally, there is a team called. Let me see. We have the team.
Lucent.
I'm looking for it because I think I've just lost it. Lucent, yes, Lucent. The 10th place team from the second division. Unfortunately, they did not qualify for the second division again in the promotion tournament, so I believe that they will be featured in the lower tier of competition. And the last team today, of course, is JD Excel. So the biggest fish in the pond when it comes to Group A. Pretty much everyone is expecting them to exit the group without any problems, and it really looks like this will be the case for JDXL. They've been performing really well when it comes to the NLC division, the main NLC division, placing second in the regular split, and then kind of falling off in the playoffs because they placed third, losing 3-0 to X7. But besides it, they are clearly the best team in Group A.
So you've given us quite a good rundown of what we could be seeing today in terms of the Group A, what the results could be. But I think we should also be considering something else, which is, what kind of attitude and mentality the teams will have going into this tournament. So in the first promotions, it was presented as a kind of pros versus amateurs, a little bit of a mixed bag between real experienced players and like new players here. And I want to know, what do you think about this? Do you think they're going to come in with a try-hard mentality if I need to give my best? Or do you think they are kind of exhausted from this season, a real long season, and they're going to be like chilling and trying new things?
I think it will depend on different teams because for some, I don't want to say worse teams, but from the looks of it, from the teams from the lower level of competition, of course, they will be trying to make their names for themselves during this tournament. They will try their best to actually showcase their performance, their skills, and maybe will be considered coming into the next season, which will be in 2023 for the better teams. When it comes to JDXL, at least in groups, I don't believe that they will have to stretch too much. So there is a possibility of those games where they will be playing off-meta picks, maybe their comforts, maybe something fun, to see how it goes, because I believe just pure scale difference between JDXL and the rest of the teams in Group A should be enough to grant them the passage to the next part of the tournament.
It's also to be noted that this first stage will be based on a double round robin, which means the teams are going to be facing each other twice. And well, we'll see what the record is for GDXL against the other teams. But they also have to take into account that, for example, Hydras come as the wildcards in a way, so we don't really know what to expect from them. Of course, you've talked about the results they had during the close qualifier, but who knows, because this also brings us to the topic of the patch that is being played during this tournament is a 12-18. I want to know what your thoughts are about this. Do you think they're going to be following the meta closely, or do you think they're going to opt for something a little bit more outside that comfort zone?
So 12-18 is the world's patch, so the players have a lot of knowledge and insight into the best picks. It looks like Veteran is with us. He finally managed to join us, so I guess that we will welcome him with open arms and see how it goes. Oh, Veteran, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello. It's good to be here. Good to be here. Let me move this. There you go. All right, there you go. I'm here in all my glory. Good to meet you guys. We were just about to talk about 12-18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do you think about it?
Well, I think on current patch, I expect Aatrox to be pick ban. I think I do like that we're going to be able to showcase a lot about top lane, because you actually do end up with a lot of quite experienced top laners in NLC 2-3 and even in NLC 1. I think that's one of the biggest strengths that the NLC regions had as a whole. Once you get picks like Aatrox targeted, or some people who do play some soft counter to that champion coming in, you could see some big differentiations in skill between the lineups here. I also think that you're starting to see a tendency towards carry junglers. That probably should have been the case most of the split, but once you get to the world's level, that's when you start seeing people be like, oh, you is clearly, being such a hard carry here on these carry jungle champs. Let's see if maybe we can pull it off. And we do have some really good carry junglers here, even on some of the NLC 1 teams that are trying stuff, like Faith, for example. He's a very big carry jungler in solo queue, so I'm excited to see those kinds of things as well. That 12-18 is not just bringing in, but the world's meta itself is bringing in, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed for the jungle meta, if I can add something. Because so far from what I've seen, Maokai and Sejuani being the leitmotif of, jungle picks, besides those carry junglers that Elioya picked. And completely honest, either Maokai or Sejuani are not that exciting champions to follow. So I really wish, and keeping my fingers crossed, that we will see more of those carry junglers like Belveth, like Viego. Maybe something new will pop up. So this is something that I wish for when it comes to jungle picks.
So we're quite close to getting into the pick and ban stage, and I want to ask you both to give me your predictions in terms of how this group is going to rank after today. So let's start with your Veteran, who arrived like a few minutes ago. So tell us what your take is on that.
Sorry, I'm trying to get up all of the groups. So which group are we talking about here? It's Group A, right?
A, yeah.
Okay, so obviously I'm really interested to see what JDXL end up doing today. I'm going to be real with you. I don't have full expectations on how I think the lineup itself is going to end up looking at the end. I obviously expect JDXL to dominate, but there's always some kind of a team in 2-3 that displays some kind of a play we've never seen before, who's able to find their niche, and that's all I'm really hoping for today. I'm not going to go into a hand prediction. I'm also not going to go into full fanboy mode of the obvious favorites of the group. But I'm just hoping to see really good opportunities from the underdogs coming in today.
Okay, so what about you, Maguire? What do you think about this? Do you agree with veteran?
Yeah, I've got to agree, but I will be going into fanboy mode, of course, supporting my Polish boy in the mid lane, Roscoe.
Hey.
I believe he's the
Oh,
future of
respectable.
Polish talent when it comes to middle lane. We have quite a lot of exceptional players, but not good enough to just make it to tier one. You know, being featured in those NLC teams. We've seen a couple of them, like Chocolate performing one split in Excel. We've seen Selfie back in the day, but I'm really waiting for a player that will break through this level and make it for a longer time when it comes to the middle lane, because of course Poland is known for their junglers, for their supports, but when it comes to some different roles, we are not so proficient. And Roscoe, he might be just the guy. Of course, he's really young, he's at the start of his career, but I believe that he has this mechanical skill required, but then he has to develop, get more experience, and be this really smart player to make it to the tier 1 scene.
Ooh, now I'm excited to watch him play too. It's always interesting when we can all get together from different countries and different leagues and just take a look at what players were interested in seeing them play. Okay, so that's another case for our casters to analyze later on. But for now, there's another thing that has been, in my head, because in this first stage, we're going to be talking about best of ones, right? So win or you lose, there's not much more to it. But then if they make, they're going to be having to play best of threes and best of fives for like the quarterfinals and finals and finals. Do we think that benefits the more experienced teams that haven't played together? Or do we think that can be opening a window for new teams to explore options? Let's go with you, veteran.
Yeah, I mean, best of fives will always inherently favour the more experienced teams, because you have to think about best of ones as a sprint. A sprint in an obstacle course, and anyone can trip during that. But when it comes to the best of five, that's a marathon. And even with the obstacle course, even if people can trip, the guys less likely to trip over the longer period of time will be the more experienced players. So once you get into the best of five stage, that's when you can start betting on your veterans. That's also when a lot of variance is removed from the predictions. But up until that point, there's obviously chances to upset. And as we've seen, even at a world's level, it doesn't mean that there aren't chances to upset in a BO5 as well. Just you have to be very, very, very consistent over your strategy against your opponents. But that is also the flip side, right? You're only really preparing for one opponent at a time at that point, rather than the whole group at the same time. So that also can give the newer teams an edge, and that's what they have to take.
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with veteran. Even if you trip at the start of the long run, then you can recover. Then you can kind of go through the first trip and of course make it in the end. And additionally, I think some of those better teams from the first division of NLC, they could feel really confident in their own abilities and maybe not prepared that much against the worst teams. So there is a chance that in best of one, they will be surprised with some of those picks that the, let's say, the worst teams have prepared for against them.
We'll take a look on that. But for now, we're going to be handing over to the casters with the code and Dino for the pick and bans. I'll see you later, guys, and have fun. Bye.
Hey, thank you very much, Carmeline. Middlecott here, the only caster older than 65 million years joining me, Dino. We are straight into pick and ban. How you feeling, man? Oh, Dino, I think you muted, mate.
Yeah, my mic wasn't unmuted. I was so excited I forgot to unmute my mic. Happens to be only online because normally I have producers taking that brunt for me, right? But that's why I love being here, because this is actually what I did to start out. What a lot of casters did to start out is cover the below the tier 1 ERL regions. For me, it was open to Benelux. And I agree with all the desk said. It's up to these teams. Like we look at Hydras and Lucent Esports. They are here to surprise and to show what they have ready for the other teams. But I'm expecting we'll see a lot of things like Sejuani and Maokai as well, because it just gives you, like, straight off draft, so many easy tools to use. So I'm really excited. Are we going to see like really off meta picks from these guys, like just comfort, or are we going to see like the world's?
I think we're probably going to be seeing a bit of both, and I'm actually really excited to see Lucent and Hydras face off here in this game because they are probably the two most evenly matched teams in this group, if that does mean that they are on the lower end of the table. But we're already starting to see some of those high power picks that you were sort of alluding to there, Dino, with that Sejuani first pick for Lucent and the Misfortune of Mumu locked in for Hydras.
Yeah, and Misfortune is one of the bitter champs of Imperial as well, so I like for them to actually instantly go for it, pair it with the Amumu, make sure that they have that covered. A quick reminder for the viewers watching, this is Group A, but Hydras is already playing with a substitute for the first game. Laxwow is subbing in the top lane because the other top laner couldn't quite make it for the first game, so already on the back foot, and as you said, a very important match, because these two are expected to be at the bottom of the table. So if you drop the first game already against your direct opponent, it's going to become harder to climb to that top 2 where you want to be if you want to advance in the tournament.
I think number 2 is the spot that both these teams should be realistically aiming for, and dropping a game against one of your sort of direct competitors for that spot is never going to feel good. The Tristana and the Braum here can give Lucent a little bit of early playmaking in that bot lane to match up against the Misfortune and Amumu, so I'm expecting a fair few fireworks there already, and this Veigar, a strong scaling pick in the mid lane for Colonel.
And they're going through the draft really quickly. Lucent directly saw, okay, your Amumu MF plan, we're just going to put Braum into there along with Tristana, two champions that do fairly well in that matchup. I mean, if Amumu tries to engage, the Tristana can, of course, disengage with the ulti, and Braum can actually block the entire bullet time of an MF. So as long as you don't get ganked too much, you don't get put too far behind, it should be survivable, and you're setting Mirai up for the mid to late game. And I think it's reflecting in their bans as well, because they're now banning junglers that could really impact that lane, like the Maokai that we've seen at Worlds do a lot of damage in the early game, so maybe they just don't want to face it.
That pick is absolutely ridiculous right now. And on the other side, Hydras taking away the LeBlanc from Kurosh. This is a champion that he absolutely loves to play. And I think the Olaf is one of the few picks that DBL had in the regular split of the NLC Div 2, where he was able to actually go toe-to-toe with a lot of those sort of higher tier, very mechanically skilled top laners that division does have.
Yeah, and to reiterate the point why these two teams are expected to be lower in the bracket, Lucent, of course, dropped out of the Division 2, sadly for them, even though they came in back in the day in the UKL scene with a lot of hype. And Hydras, they're from the open qualifiers and Indian closed qualifiers. So there's a team, they were invited into it, but they really had to prove that they could make it to this leg of the tournament. And then you get into this group where you have teams like a GDXL running around. So this first game, I want to see a lot of consistency out of these teams, like show that you are able to fight in the early game, show that you're able to play around objectives, and picking up stuff like an Ornn in the top lane would do exactly that, but they basically...
Or a Victor in the mid lane!
Go for the Victor in the mid lane, yeah, why not?
I mean, it just epitomizes consistency. And it was something that Veteran was talking on the desk, and I myself, as an LGL enjoyer, experienced last night. Even if you are one of these lower ranked teams, if you play your game well, if you play nice and consistent, you don't make any silly mistakes, you can take down an MSI champion. Maybe not these guys, but maybe in the future. The Gnar, another stabilizing pick, and that means that Sejuani is actually going to be flexed into the jungle.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bitter blind, maybe. With the Aatrox already banned out, it's not like you're expecting to go up against that counter, but a lot of melee tops are being played at the moment. So Gnar usually has that range against melee advantage. I'm looking at Laxwow, I'm not looking like, okay, what do you want to pick into it? He's a big Camille player. Could be a fine matchup if you get to the mid to late game. Gives your team a lot of engage potential as well on something like the Victor and Tristana. But if you look over at the side of Hydras Esports, they don't really have a lot of frontline. So they really need that Amumu MF along with the Graves in the jungle to pop off in the early game, so they can bridge that gap that a frontline would give them in a later 5v5 typical front-to-back scenario. Because if you look at the other side for Lucent, they kept it simple. They have a Victor and Tristana. If it's a 40-minute game, they win.
This is just like the most simple, like very, very easy to pilot composition from Lucent. But I really like that you do highlight the lack of tank on the side of Hydras, because you can look at that Amumu down in the bottom lane and go, hold on, isn't he meant to be a tank? But when he's on that support income, he's not quite going to be able to get the same amount of items through. Very similar to a Nautilus in that way. His entire job is to get in the middle of a team fight, CC everybody, and if he dies immediately afterwards, as long as you win the team fight, you don't actually care too much.
Yeah, Amumu is the one champion I regret not thinking about when I was looking in my crystal ball picks, because most stats for an Amumu would have been a very good shout. I ended up going for Wukong because I thought if a team picks Wukong, they're probably already inting draft and then they'll die a lot. But yeah, Amumu in this regard is not going to be a tank. We see that what we see a lot for these teams and what Veteran and the Disc with McFire and Carmeline went on about this as well is like, are you going to play your own style? Do you have curveball picks to throw at the enemy team? And I think locking that Camille so late into the draft where you already see the Gnar, it opens up some dive opportunity. If you have midi Gnar under tower, you can go in with the Hextech Ultimatum and Graves can come in on a stacked wave to gank. You do have a way to set this Camille up for success and split push around the champion. Problem is it's your substitute, and how comfortable are you around playing to the top side? So it looks to me like they really problem solved during the drafts. Like, okay, we're not going to play a tank into this matchup of the Gnar and a Sejuani top side because that's a huge risk of getting dove yourself. Let's give some tools to Laxwow and let's give him one of his comfort. Because aside from the Aatrox, it's mostly play champion, so he's at least going to feel comfortable in.
And matching up into DBL, who we do expect to be a little bit of the weaker side of Lucent, even though it is your substitute player, you just need a couple of ganks on something like a Camille, and she is one of these champions that can really take over a side lane when she's accelerated. But on the other side, it's a lot of scaling for Hydras, I feel like. You've got this Camille, you've got this Veigar. These are champions that are going to need a little bit of time, a little bit of loving care and attention to get online. And if Lucent can actually come out and hit them unexpectedly in the mid-game, I feel like they've got a lot of options as well.
100%. I think what Lucent did is really smart, where for the first game in the competition, actually in the entire leg of this tournament, they kept it really simple for them to play and navigate team fights. I mean, yeah, Veigar and Scalia can be really good at split push, but if you start approaching the early game objectives, you all hit level 6. It's just a question of, do we have Mega Gnar up and is Sejuani in a good angle to actually press the ult button, and then you're already finding a good fight. And that's the biggest fear I have for Hydra's esports draft is champions like Veigar, they do peel for themselves, of course, with the baby cage, but it's not that strong. It's not that hard of a disengage. Actually, it's very good to be really annoying and have it on a short cooldown. But if the Sejuani instantly finds someone like the Veigar, someone like ZMF, then the fight can quickly spiral out of control. While for the other side, for Lucent, they just need to find angles to have that 5v5 front to back in the mid to late game with their lane surviving, and it should be a really easy composition to play out.
Yeah. And I believe that we are going to be jumping onto the Rift Dino. No, those are our faces. We'll get going on that in just a second. I was so excited to get into game one. We know that sometimes when you've got these tournaments, you can have some delays before the games get started. Not going to be the case here. Hopefully, we're going to be jumping in that game straight up. But Dino, it gives the of us a little bit of an opportunity for me to ask you the most horrible question in the world. A play-by-play can ask their color caster, who do you think's winning this game?
We're starting like this already.
Yeah.
Actually, like, I'm not gonna say who I think is gonna win because I think there is a lot to be said about the consistency of a certain comp here. I hope for Hydras they win with this comp because it's a comp that does a couple of things right. They have a strong bot lane that instantly got hard countered in draft. But if you can still get them ahead, it should be a strong way, along with the Graves, to cover your bases in the early game. And then you have Laxwow, who is subbing in for the team really last minute. This player from Ukraine that is good friends with Imperial, that got subbed into the top lane, he gets his Camille. So if he can get that online and show up on this stage for his first game and maybe even his last, he can already show a lot of teams like, hey, maybe you should look into having me for your top lane in the future.
Well, I think that is an excellent point for you to bring up because that's one of the wider conversations that you can have around these sort of pro-am tournaments. It's not just an opportunity for the teams to show what they can do and that they can actually take down some of these higher level opponents. It's a really good opportunity for a lot of these players because even if you are coming through on one of these Div 3, one of these Div 2 teams a little bit lower down, if you have strong performances against the big boys, against the very, very best of the best in the NLC region, then hey, 2023, you could be looking at a spot on an ERL2, ERL1 team.
And that's why I love the Pro-Am format as well. As I've said on the desk a little bit, it's supposed to be a done deal for teams like Kojima themselves. Yeah. But don't forget, those teams are on the way out of their season. Like, their peak has already passed. While for the amateur side, you now get to face later on in the tournament for these players on your screen. They get to face people like Christ in the top, like Dan in the jungle. And if you show up big time, you might be able to get yourself on a radar where you weren't on before. For these two teams, this first game in that regard is also very important because, again, we expect them to be like the weaker side of our bracket that we're going to be following today in Group A. But if they can actually take this first win and get some tempo going into the later stages of today, maybe they have a good showing against something like GA.
We will have to wait and see. Both junglers starting on their respective blue buffs, and that ward from Kurosh will spot out Panda as he clears away these Raptors. So information gained here for Lucent, but the Graves isn't a champion that really wants to be ganking too much in the early stages of the game, much more concerned about scaling up as well as many other members of the Hydras composition. So I think if we're going to see any action from them, it's going to be in this bot lane with the Amumu, with the Misfortune.
And in that regard, Lucent did a very good job in the draft. They just went with a draft that neutralizes that bot lane as much as possible. It's not like you have the best counter to an MF. There's a lot of other champions that can make MF's life really miserable, but what the Tristana does do is you have that disengage of the Buster Shot once you hit level 6. And for the Braum in that regard as well, you can jump in front of an Amumu engage, you can use your Unbreakable Wing to block a lot of damage from the MF, and they are actually getting the shot as well due to the passive of the Explosive Shot, just to make sure that this Amumu MF doesn't get rolling too early into the game. Because as you said, that's what we're really looking at for Hydras. They insta-locked it almost on the red side. Without having a regard for counters in the lane, then it has to work for you in-game.
Yeah, you've invested a lot of draft resources in quite a confident way, I know, and we'll have to see if it is going to be able to pan out. Junglers, again, just sort of trading on opposite sides of the map. Neither one concerned with interacting too much in these early stages. We did just see a reset come through from DBL a little while ago, and Laxwell pushing that wave in, having a pretty good time on this Camille so far.
Yeah, I mean, DBL, he knows what his task is going to be. He's going to be surviving the Camille in the early game, not really setting up for a lot of plays, goes back and instantly gets the cull to try to turn this into some sort of farm lane where you're not really pressuring each other, and you get a gold spike a bit later on when the team fights start rolling around. For Laxwell, as you said, he has a comfortable lane, and that's good for him because it's his comfort pick. And again, Camille, you don't really expect a lot of early game pressure from it. It's more towards the 2-3 item mark that Camille becomes an unstoppable threat in the side lane for this composition of Lucent Esports. So it's a very quiet, stable early game, but that's to be expected maybe for a first game in a tournament.
Well, and I think that both teams would be relatively happy with this, because whilst there are champions that can get things done a little bit early in the game, both compositions do have strong scaling elements for them. The Victor is absolutely terrifying at every single item he gets under his belt, and the Veigar as well. So I think low action in the mid lane definitely going to be something to watch out for. But with a Drake just spawning on the table, maybe junglers look a little bit more towards that one.
I hope so, because we are hungry for some action in this first game. It has been a bit of a quiet ride up until the 5-minute mark, but that's to be expected maybe as well if you look at how the draft panned out. And in general, I don't expect a lot of fighting from Hydras unless if they have the opportunity to unlock that MF Amumu at level 6 and try to play around objectives that way. My biggest fear for them is if they let it go like a stale early game and a really slow mid game, there is a lot of disengage for Lucent as well. It's going to be really hard to attack Lucent Esports through a choke point when you have a Victor, when you have a Braum holding that area. It's going to be very hard to engage as frequently and as casually maybe as Lucent, but we missed it completely on the screen.
Hold on. Kurosh still has Flash, he still has Cleanse.
Something illegal happened in the mid lane, and it was so illegal that we weren't allowed to see it.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't see that. Kurosh, don't worry, no one saw it happen. Yep. There was some crazy bug that occurred that meant that Colonel's ult did like 1,000,000% max HP damage or something. That's fine. But that shouldn't be happening in this lane. We just said that this is a lane where we're expecting it to be a bit more low action. This kill could swing that in Colonel's favor and allow a little bit more playmaking for Hydras.
Absolutely, and this is something we want to see from Hydras, to be able to play around 1 or 2 lanes with the Graves, because as you said, Graves is not the most active ganker, but he's really good in counter ganking. He's really good in just making sure once you hit level 6 that you maybe even secure a kill or have that extra bit of damage once it comes around to impacting a lane. And with Colonel already taking a lead on this Veigar in the early game, you have the setup there that if Kurosh actually invests his Flash Cleanse one time to gank or even react to ganks of Flawless and make sure that you start to snowball that lead even further into your advantage.
And look at the item discrepancy between the two mid laners at the moment. This is sort of what we can highlight. Kurosh is sat on a load of components that aren't really doing too much for him. You've got the Lost Chapter there for Colonel, and you've got the Dark Seal, so any more kill participation is going to scale this Veigar even harder. And because of that passive on the Lost Chapter, that extra mana, it's a lot easier for the Veigar to generate shove and priority in the lane when maybe she shouldn't be doing that otherwise.
Yeah, 100%, and the stacks of the Veigar are already snowballing a little bit out of control. We've seen that there's a lot of confidence in Colonel, the Polish mid laner display on this Veigar pick. It's one of his most played champions as well, so in that regard, Hydras really did a good job of picking champions that their players are comfortable with in a draft that kind of makes sense looking at the other side. And you gotta watch out for a Veigar getting early kills, because it's one of the better champions to just 100-0 someone if they have a lead. Like once this Veigar gets 1 or 2 items ahead of the curve, it doesn't really matter if you're Flawless or TBL, the execute damage of the ulti alone might be enough to take you down in a fight.
Dino, I think I know what you're talking about there. That was a Q and a W, and half of Kurosh's HP is gone. And that does going to pose a lot of problems. These might pose even more for Flawless as he flashes away just in time. Selfway not quite connecting on that second bandage toss, but with Rift Herald on the table and Lucent's junglers being forced away, I think Hydras may want to pick this one up.
Yeah, they're wasting no time in trying to snowball this mid advantage that they have. You see the pressure of Colonel moving forward, and then the rotation of Selfie out of that bot lane where they got a little bit countered to be able to make sure that you have the numbers advantage. Instantly push Flawless out of his own jungle, waste his flash, and then take the Rift Herald. The question now is, okay, you don't really give anything for this Rift Herald, which is huge. That's something you look towards. Can Lucent trade anything? No, they can't. And then the second question is, okay, who are we feeding the plates to? Because Colonel is already doing a very great job in the mid lane. You can further give him even a bigger lead by using the Rift Herald in the mid lane, or you can look towards that bot lane where the MF really wants to get unlocked as well.
Yeah. I'm very much on board with like just getting this Veigar to a point where the W actually just one-shots people instead of figuratively one-shots people. But I don't know, maybe Panda feels like sharing the love a little bit more. Something that we didn't really talk about in the pre-game was that this Hydras roster, they've made that run through these sort of qualifiers right to get to this point. They've had a lot of games together, and whilst they may be playing with a substitute top laner, they've got a bit more experience in these competitive matches than Lucent, who have replaced 3 players since that promotion run that they unfortunately weren't able to re-qualify back into Div 2 with.
Yeah, 100%. And I think...
Flawless, that's not where the ultimate needs to go, but Colonel being chased down by 3 members of Lucent surely should fall down. One more Q, and Kurosh picks up a retribution kill on his opposite number in the mid lane.
Now the numbers advantage was there for Lucent, and they actually pick up a very easy kill off of that. Colonel a little bit out of position, even invested his flash sadly for him, while Kurosh kept his summoners, as we have known him to do this game. So he should be a little bit more safe or safer in the mid lane. As you said, for Lucent, changes were due. They had a roster that played the entire run at Division 2 NLC, and then they didn't even re-qualify for it. So looking at the tournament...
Imperial, this is a lot of damage. Flash forced away from Misfortune. Panda counter-ganking on that Graves, but with Flawless here as well. Maybe the Graves has overstepped the bullet time and the Amumu combo, but Marco blocking the damage with that shield. Panda forced away, and Marco will burn down with that Ignite. Selfway with the first kill of the fight, and Panda can go forward. Flashback from Mirai, and they get away just about. Lucent lose 1 in the bot lane.
Get behind Braum was what Marco was calling to his fellow bot lane and jungle, but it wasn't enough. The damage in the end ticked through, and now Hydras can actually look to get another advantage from that play and start up this dragon. It's a bit risky, a low HP bar there on Imperial, but nobody of Lucent really in place to counter this play. And as we were alluding to for Lucent, they had to change something. One of those things was that bot lane as well, and they looked to make a very aggressive play with Marco and Mirai trying to get onto Imperial, but sadly they just didn't have enough in the tank with the counter gank of Panda coming in at the right time, and then that combo of a Mumu MF that you should fear in any fight that has more than one member in there. And even though the Braum is really good as a counter pick to the MF bull time, if you eat it so early on, then you probably don't.
You've not really got these sort of items to sort of build up your tankiness to back up that excellent shielding that you can offer your team. Starting to see items come through. First Mythic of the game completed here for Colonel, going for that Everfrost, so additional setup for the Veigar. He's got enough damage as it is.
He's got enough damage, but why not go for more? I would love to see a second item, Rabadons, out of him. It's one of the more interesting Veigar build paths. I'm pretty sure Veigar V2 will probably flame me for this, but it's just a whole lot of fun to instantly get that increase on the AP you're stacking. But the Everfrost is going to give them some more utility, and I think it's a good buy for Colonel because it's one of his major roles in this team. If you look at consistent CC, you have a Mumu, you have the ulti of Lagswell when he really goes in on the Camille, and then you basically have Veigar. That's your real CC. Not counting the mega broken smokescreen of a Graves, of course.
Oh, I am so glad you said that, because that ability causes... Oh my word, like, I play Udin and I play AD carries. Smokescreen is just everything that I hate about League of Legends sometimes. Hydras now summoning the Herald in the bot lane. 2 members of Lucent here to defend, a couple more moving over, but it's just going to be the plates donated to that bot lane.
And this is what I wanted to see from these teams in the first game, is show that they can pull off some pretty easy but consistent moves on the map, some set plays. And as expected with the Herald, it was like a question, where are you going to send it? And MF would really love to have it to get a kick in the butt in damage-wise, because MF right now builds those more expensive crit items, so really getting that ulti to hit harder. You want some plates, and they see the opportunity to just run into the bot lane, take 1 plate with auto attacks, put down the Rift Herald, take the next 2 plates, and that would give them a slight gold swing in that
Ooh, Dino! Panda's recalling in the jungle, but 3 members of Lucent jump on his head! Mirai with the kill.
Caught shopping at the worst time there. Good invade from Lucent, really aggressive play there at the back end, at the tail end of that bot lane Herald. And just when I was praising Hydras for, hey, make sure that you're consistent around the set play, they're not really consistent about using their vision around the character, and they just get caught shopping.
Yeah, that means that 14.5 nearest damage, 15 minutes on the clock. This game is as even as it could possibly be. Got trade of damage in the mid lane, that Chaos Storm burning down onto Colonel. With that, Leandri's already completed for Kurosh, but 2 kills apiece, 1 dragon apiece, and the gold. Ooh, but Eva, this game is so perfectly poised as we start to transition towards the mid game for one of these teams to really grab it by the cojones.
The cojones,
a lot of cojones here as we've got multiple members of Lucent diving forward. Selfway flashing back, but the reset came through for Mirai, so they get the extra jump forward. The concussive blows, the stun, and Flawless with the kill as Lexawal going for a play up onto DBL in the top side, already investing that Hextech ultimatum. Not quite finding enough damage onto the Nart just yet, and those hyper procs mean that DBL can continue to kite away. Doesn't overextend, doesn't go too far forward, and will back away from his tower.
I was looking towards the minimap to see if Panda actually had a dive angle there on the Mininar, but he was actually taking the Rift Herald for his team. So we jump back to that play made in the bot side after a little tour around the Rift, and you were talking about cojones. Maybe Hydras had a little bit too much of that vigor in the bot lane, moving forward with Flawless there in position to actually counter the play and to surprise them over the wall, and with the flash of Imperial still down. His cleanse up, actually, if I look at that correctly, he might have not been able to escape, didn't even invest the cleanse, and Selfie actually tried to flash out of danger. So good play from Lucent, because don't forget, like, even though both teams scale, they scale so differently. For Lucent, just being at an even or winning state in the mid to late game will make sure that they actually have a very good front-to-back teamfight comp, where you have Mirai and Kurosh are the 2 you're looking towards to have the gold in their back pocket, and right now Mirai with those 2 kills is really set up for success.
Has got that Kraken Slayer and a crit cloak on top. Marco here, locked into baby cages, does take a little bit of damage, but I think Hydras wisely not investing too many cooldowns into the Braum. Infernal Drake on the board. Lexwell moving back towards the top lane, but has the TP available if Hydras want to contest this. It's second Drake. You don't necessarily need to fight for this one if you don't think that you can win it.
It's a hard fight for Hydras. These are the game situations where they don't want to be caught with their pants down when it's like a 5v5 around an objective, because then you have those easy tools from Lucent coming through. They're using the pressure of the Rift Herald to take down mid tower. This is huge for the game state, because it will give them more room in the map.
DBL forced to flash away there on about 30% HP on that Mini-Gnar. So we've seen second Drake traded for mid lane tower and free time for a Camille in the top side. Dino, who do you think's winning out on that one?
I think for Lucent, it's the obvious play. I like the reaction of Hydras of not overcommitting or trying to counter it and actually see what they can gain on the map. And these are things I'm looking out for these teams to see if they even have a fighting chance against the beast that is GDXL in this group. It's okay realizing how strong the enemy team is around the objective and seeing what you can take out of it. The mid tower will give them the breathing room they need to unlock this Camille in the side lanes and make sure that they can have vision pushing forward, so that Laxwow can actually try to set up a split push along with Colonel maybe in the other side lane. Then you keep your Amumu and Myth in the mid lane along with the Graves, just to keep the waves under control and to be able to rotate fast to one of those side lanes. So I like the play if those things I'm talking about will be followed.
Well, we'll have to see. I'll have to see, Dino. But I am glad that we are seeing... Like, we're not seeing just crazy stuff come out from either of these teams. It's been very deliberate. It's been pretty controlled a lot of the time. And that means that when you do start looking at those higher tier opponents, the questions that start coming up are not can we compete with them on a macro level, but is it going to be a hands difference? Now, we are only 18 minutes in. There is plenty of opportunities for both these teams to make some bad decisions, but I'm hopeful, Dino. I'm hopeful that we're going to see a continuation of what we've had for these first rough 20 minutes.
I mean, if Worlds Plains was any consolidation maybe, or like
indication,
any indication, yeah, of what lower tier teams can maybe do against higher tier, then they should feel confident.
Are we just talking about RNG versus DFM? Because I'm happy to talk about that.
I mean, we're talking about
like.
Loud getting games of major regions as well, and EG maybe dropping games. It hasn't been as clear cut as in the past. If we just take DRX out of the equation, where minor region teams were able to take games out of the major regions, and it mainly comes down to something that alludes to macro play being way more important every single season of pro play, and these teams have a fundamental understanding. It's not like perfect, it's not like I'm looking here completely in awe at the crisp macro play I'm seeing from both Hydras and Lucent, but there are a lot of set plays that they're showing, there are a lot of decisions that they're showing that other teams maybe just go overboard when they want to see if they can hands div the better team in order to get a lead. As I'm saying that, maybe the top lane is in trouble.
Selfway find the hook back onto DBL, who is able to get away with an R, but doesn't go mega in time. That was a close run thing, but Laxwell runs out with his first kill of the game, and he's going to get that tower as well. This is what we were talking about. You only need a little advantage on this Camille, and she can really start to get scary.
100%. Diving the Mini-Gnar with the Camille is a fun sport to be partaking in, and definitely if you have the support of your Amumu there. This is mainly because the vision control they had around that bot side. DBL not even aware of the rotation of Amumu from mid to bot, and that's a good follow-up from the play you made around the Dragon. You take the mid tower, you take control over the map, and then you see if you can make those side lane plays happen. Now Lucent, they do respond with a tower in the top side, but that's a small... how do you say that? It's like
consolation prize.
Yeah, consolation
it's like
prize.
Yeah, wow.
Eating dessert before finishing dinner, like it tastes good, but it doesn't give you a lot of sustenance.
I think you're wrong there. I think I'm a big.
You're a big dessert before finishing dinner guy.
Well, yeah. Well,
okay.
I say, like, I get halfway through the dinner, I'm like, do you know what? Cake sounds nice right now, and then the darndest thing happens every time, Dino. I forget to eat the rest of my dinner.
Oh, okay, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Mum warned me about that. We've got a Drake spawning in 40 seconds time, and it would be soul point for Lucent. I think this is the one area, the one thing that the team that were in Division 2 last split really hold over Hydras right now is that Drake stacking. But you can see Hydras absolutely not scared to go for them as Mirai gets locked down, gets shut down by the Veigar in the mid lane. And their partner in that bot lane, Marco Polo goes down. Hydras, they don't care about the Drake. They are moving to the Baron.
I have a feeling that certain summoners are disabled this game and we just don't know about it because Mirai has both summoners up, gets stunned by the baby cage and instantly blown to pieces by Hydras that don't waste any time for it. And yeah, you get soul point out of it if you're fast enough, but Hydras will get the Baron. That's a bigger prize to be shut down in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when you've got these champions like the Camille, like the Graves, like the Veigar, who can sort of post up in a lane and be an absolute menace to deal with. The Baron buff is a very valuable prize, but if Hydras aren't proactive with the purple buff, then that soul point that Lucent have just gained could come back to bite them in 5 minutes.
And it was such a beautiful chain of events for Hydras, but such a painful one to watch as a Lucent esports fan, because you should be safe there. You're just contesting mid lane prio with a Victor and a Tristana. That should be a really easy feat to pull off, definitely with macro in position. But Mirai, he just gets stunned, instantly rooted up, and I don't know, he's just not pressing his cleanse, I guess. Just not pressing the buttons correctly, and the entire bot lane just gets wiped off the map before they respond. And that was good heads-up play from Hydras to pump all the damage on top of that stun, but a little bit of a misplay from Lucent.
And it's some of the pick potential that you do have with like stuff like the Veigar, with the Enuma. It's like if someone is walking in the wrong place, they can get locked down. And yeah, maybe you should have pressed like D or F on your keyboard at some point, but hey, if the play is going to be made, the play is going to be made. And now Hydras are trying to use a little bit of this pressure. Selfway getting caught out, but Flawless blocked in the front line as well. Marco taken to around about 50% HP, but Lucent are still going forward. Lagswall here, level 14 on the Camille. 2 items completed, enough to scare away Lucent. DBL happy to still walk into the bot side.
The battle lines were drawn there really deep into the Lucent jungle. It's hard to over-engage through those choke points, as the biggest fear for the Hydras comp for me was fighting around those choke points, and Lucent show us that they have a lot in the tank there to defend it, but you're not defending anything. Hydras already took everything that was dear to you, and they're just using this Baron buff to great effect, taking tower after tower and making sure that at the same time Lagswell can just play the split push game.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we were talking about. When you get the Baron, when you trade it for the soul point, you need to generate enough of a gold lead with this Baron that the enemy team, even if they've got that soul point, there is no hope that they are getting another Drake on board. It's exactly what Hydras are doing. They've built that gold lead to 4,000. They're probably going to add another 1k with this tower falling down.
And the only thing we have to check into now for Lucent is look at item spikes and see if their carries are still following the carries of Hydras. They've just backed with all that money of all the towers they picked up, and if you look at the items, it's kind of under control now. The gold lead, yeah, it's huge. You have almost a 5k advantage for Hydras, but it doesn't really translate into a lot of items except for the Camille, and that's my biggest issue for Lucent going forward. DBL can't survive that lane for long anymore, so you might have to send people like Kurosh or Mirai there, but both don't support the TP, and that's when the split push gets really scary.
I'd be worried about sending the level 12 Tristana to face the level 15 Camille. That is, it's not a fun time. I think Tristana is probably better than a lot of AD carries in matching up against her, but that...
I mean, yeah...
That Q still does 60% of your HP, like, it's...
It's still a rough time. I mean, you have Buster Shot, you have your jump, you have, after a while, you get a lot of range increase with Draw the Beat, but it's not enough right now, and the biggest issue for me is that sending TP-less people to fight a Camille in the side lane just leaves the other side of the map open for abuse when Lagswell just goes out of vision and TP's in for the fight. With the Hextech Ultimatum is actually a very big way for Hydras to engage on the enemy backline, and he could show that to great effect. Right now, Lucent, they're just trying to weather the storm. They're just trying to make sure that the item discrepancy between people like Mirai and Kurosh and Colonel and Imperial aren't too big, but it's spiraling a little bit out of control after that Baron and Dragon play, and they need to be careful because this is perfect for Hydras. This is what this comp wanted. They survived the early game, they have 2 items on all their carries, they have a quadruple threat comp now with Camille online and the typical Graves. Yeah, you don't really call it a tank build, but it's almost a tank gore drinker build. And it's going to be really hard for Lucent to navigate even a front to back.
Yeah, True Grit is bull something. But Graves is going to be very tanky. In 40 seconds, Lucent are going to have to make a very difficult decision, though, because they're on this soul point, and if they get the Infernal Soul, that probably equalizes this game to a decent extent. But the issue is, they don't necessarily need to go for it. Yes, if Hydras can get a couple of those Drakes, that's bonus AP, that's bonus AD, that's bad, but it's not going to lose you the game. Losing a fight around this Drake made you just that, though.
And I had a lot of hope for the comp of Lucent in these 5v5 situations because they have really easy to pull off hard engage, really easy frontline to keep the distance and to make sure that both Kurosh and Mirai are safe. But that was all banking on a lead for Hydras that wasn't too big, and the lead is there. The Camille is online.
TP.
And going to this 5v5 is gonna get bloody.
Selfways on the flank. He's looking for a Curse of the Sad Mummy that could take down Lucent Esports. Colonel's already slain Kurosh. There goes the ultimate. There goes the bullet time. Mirai knocks back Laxwell, but then Camille goes into the stasis to keep herself alive. In a little bit of a 4v1 scenario here, she's trying to take down Marco, but gets shut down herself. The Dragon finally goes down in favor of Hydras. No soul for Lucent, but the fight looked pretty damn good.
The fight looked really bad for Hydras, I have to say, but for Lucent it looked pretty okay. They somehow got Mirai out of the engage of Laxwell alive, even though he DP'd it and had the flash. And it's because the Hydras were caught between two decisions, and this is something we sadly see a lot when you are fighting up against a team that has soul points. You can't really let the dragon go over, so you're not really over-indexing on the fight, and you had 3 people stick around this Infernal Dragon. Even though Selfway found a pretty good engage, I think Hydras should have just collapsed on the fight when he was on the backline, but it got really difficult with Kurosh keeping Colonel a little bit occupied and investing the ulti. And then here, Panda, Imperial, Colonel, they just need to get their butt over to this fight, but they are doubting between, okay, we need to finish the dragon, make sure that they can't steal it. Oh, how is the other side of the fight going? Oh, well, you lost that side. Let's just quickly bail, pick up the dragon at least, but you go for a 2-for-1 in that fight, and you give some breathing room to a comp that scales into a front-to-back.
And that was some of the disengage options that Mirai has on this Tristana that we really saw come to bear in that fight. Pushing back Laxwell, jumping, flashing away, using all of these tools to keep themselves alive and get those 2 kills down. And if this Tristana is able to get to the Infinity Edge before the next big engagement, then I think Lucent, whilst they may not be in the advantage point, they've definitely got ways that they can play it out. Flawless here, going for a play here onto Colonel, is forced to flash back himself. In dives the Amumu, looking for an ultimate, and does get it down, but goes down themselves. Not enough damage to follow up the CC. Now Panda is caught out on the top side. DBL going forward, slams them into a wall, takes them down, if not for the Gore Drinker, but a moment. That's a kill, and look at the bullet time! Comboed with Colonel, the damage is ridiculous, 2 for 2.
And the fights are getting messy, the fights are getting sloppy, but I'm all for it, because even though it's not the perfect set of gameplay, it shows that both teams are willing to fight, and that Lucent, even though with their back against the wall, with Hydras taking control over the game, are looking for creative opportunities like these. You have a face-checking Colonel and Panda, you instantly engage on the Veigar, but somehow, by Selfie being really selfish with his HP bars, Colonel gets out, and then the fight really spirals out of control. You have Panda here getting pushed away by Lucent, you have Kurosh in a 1v1 with Laxwell, and Colonel stays around, lingers in the Baron Pit, puts his stun zone over it, and the bullet time just cleans up the fight.
Yeah, maybe Veigar V2's posting that one on his Twitter with Bangarang Bass playing on top of it, because that's exactly what you can do on the Veigar. You get that cage in a weird position, you lock a couple of people down, and you can combo it with the Misfortune so nicely. And the game now swings back in favor of Hydras with that fight in their advantage. Baron is on the board. They may look to move towards that in a little bit.
And the Veigar now also finished his little hat that gives him a lot of AP. So he will be hitting that front line even harder now if they try to keep the distance for their backline intact. As long as he hits a couple of those Qs, a couple of those Ws, they can look for some engages in the fight. I want to see Laxwell get a little bit more support in the game plan of just split pushing. There's not a lot of vision going to this bot side of the map where he's currently navigating towards, so it's a really risky play to push too far forward. Hydras does not really have the vision control right now to support this play, but with the TP coming up soon, they can use it to their advantage, because we've seen that DBL had to flash in the last fight. He's really vulnerable in that 1v1, and if you can make sure that Laxwell can push really deep into enemy territory, then you can use that as a crutch for the next.
And the thing is, both of these top lanes do have teleport on exactly the same cooldown, so I wouldn't be surprised if what we see from them is kind of what we saw in, the previous fight, the fight before, where they just sort of move away from each other and both TP into the fight going, yeah, we're not going to fight each other, we're going to fight absolutely everyone else. 1 minute to go until Drake is up. That would be soul for Lucent, would be soul point for Hydras, and a little bit more AP, a little bit more AD, a little bit more damage for their composition.
And the timings of both neutral objectives make it so that Lucent actually are going to really...
Oh, this is spotted.
Spotted on a ward. They just now figured out that there was a ward there. They do have a lot of damage. They are burning through it, but there come Hydras.
Top lane is TPing. I don't know if Panda is going to get here in time. This could be an inspired call here from Lucent as they go for the turn self-way. Bunny engaged on the back line, and CBL doing exactly the same thing. That's 3 knocked back with the Gnar as the Baron goes in favor of Hydras. What a steal from Panda as Lexwell diving forward to try and take out the Tristana. It is a double kill for Colonel, and the Veigar is full HP. A flash into the pit from Lexwell as they get the shield up as well. A double stun, a double kill. Hydras make the play happen.
And this is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's plays like these that make you show up at the big stage. Hydras, they are able to navigate the fight, navigate the room they got, but it's stuff like Panda getting in there, getting the steal, Laxwell knowing that he has the backup even though there's low HP bars, and flashing into the pit. That makes a huge difference.
I think the game may just be ending here and now. We have got double-digit death timers on members of Lucent as Mirai is looking for the play. Low HP bars on the members of Hydra, but it's not enough. Panda will be falling low, but not quite falling down. The Nexus is the next focus. Hydras take down Lucent in Game 1 of the Aurora Open.
It was a close contest. It was a really bloody game at the end when we roll into the last 10 minutes, but it's Hydras actually getting a really important win, because as we said when we were rolling into the game, these two teams are expected to be at the bottom of the table in Group A. Getting a win against a direct opponent, make sure you have more shots at that second seed, because let's be fair, we expect GDXL to be the first seed, but that second seed still gets you into the knockout.
And I've got to say, even though Lucent fall down this game, I think both teams could be pretty happy with some of the stuff that they've showed here. That Baron call, whilst it was ultimately their downfall, looked pretty damn close. And if Hydras are even a couple seconds slower to react, I think Lucent are getting that. They are getting out of there, and they are keeping themselves in this game.
Yeah, 100%. I think Lucent on the back foot showed a lot of fight in them. They went for a couple of those creative plays. The one around the mid bush really springs to attention, but also a lot of team fights that they suddenly started winning a little bit. In the end, it wasn't enough. I think what really happened for Hydras in a really good fashion is that they used the substitute, put it on the Camille in Laxwell, and just make sure that he can play a game that is really akin to what he does in solo queue, where it's just like, okay, you're on the side waves, you have a lead because we invested sometimes in the top lane, but that's it. After that one kill, we leave the reins to you, and he was able to impact some of these fights at key moments, while for the rest just playing towards his strengths. And at the same time, the MF came online in the early game, and that was enough for them to take the lead.
Yeah, I think Hydras, they really put themselves in a position where they gave themselves as little to do as possible. And if you don't have to do very much and then you do it, you tend to win the game. I believe that we are going to be jumping over to the analyst desks and seeing what they thought of the first game of this cup.
Hello there, welcome back to the post-game analyst desk. We are here, the three of us again. We've been talking about the game, and I wanted to know what your impressions are so far. I'd say this counts as an upset for us, you guys. Let's start with you, Veteran.
Well, I was very, very impressed by the discipline that Southway and also Imperial, as my fellow analyst here pointed out, were able to show up many points in this game. Once you had the Veigar locked in against the Tristana, against the Sedge, against this full dive composition, you know you're playing disengaged, right? And I've seen too many Hylissang games to know that there are supports out there that can't help but play permanent engage. Instead, you had Southway patiently defending his carries until Veigar got the pick, until the enemy engaged, and they did the disengages from like 11 minutes onwards and won the fights that way. I was very, very impressed by the discipline here in a very, very crucial opening game. Very impressed by the bot lane, impressed by the team composition and the plan overall.
Yeah. On top of that, I would actually add that we were discussing the possibility of other mid laner. I mean, I've asked about Azir if he's in a good spot here, but after seeing the game, I definitely can appreciate the Veigar and his cages, how much space he bought in those team fights, and how hard he made the life for the players of Lucent. They couldn't really approach the team fights unless it was Hydra who made a mistake. And in the end, we saw that in the team fight, when you combine the ultimate of Amumu and MF on top of Veigar's cage, it's just impossible for Lucent to play. And of course, after getting those items, after getting this damage, it's really easy for Hydra to play the team fights in the right manner and win the game. Kind of in an upset, I can agree, because Hydra is a team that joined the Aurora tournament from the open qualifiers. So you could make a point that they are kind of the mixed team, but they really showed their true colors today and played quite exceptionally, besides a couple of mistakes that they did along the way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, it's growing pains for them, but their plan was good, their execution was good. I think this team has a very good shot at doing a lot of good things in this tournament.
Ooh, that's interesting because, again, this was one of the teams that we weren't betting so much on, but I think they've shown a consistent style of gameplay. Again, as you guys said, a few mistakes to be corrected, but I also want to know if there are any players besides Imperial, who you will highlight and you would like to see more of, either from Lucent or from Hydras. So, Veteran, any other players you would like to talk about?
I've already mentioned this guy, but I have to say it again. Okay, when it comes to European support, all right, they always get a bit of a whack. But what I saw here, that was already a discipline level that puts him at a very, very, very strong position when it comes to tier 1 regional league even. So I want to see more from Southway here. Very, very good performance, and I hope he keeps it up, keep that discipline going. And I want to see that when he has to play aggressively, that he will go aggressively. He didn't have to here, right? And I'm just used to the other way around. But I want to make sure that, you know, when push comes to shove and they're doing the full dive, that this guy's making the power plays as well.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on him for the rest of the day, but now for you, Maguire, anyone you would like to talk about?
Well, I guess I will continue with being biased because I failed to
Always.
to kind of showcase the mid laner from Hydras, but he's also Polish kernel. As one of the chat members accurately pointed out, he's around 1,200 points in Challenger queue. So I will be keeping my eyes on him. He did have some difficult and questionable choices throughout the game when it comes to his positioning. He got caught out a couple of times, but in the end he finished with 4-1 scoreline and was quite beneficial to his team with the Veigar cage placement. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play more of those control mages and bring the value to the team.
Okay, now I'm intrigued because you guys were talking us about Azir, for example, as a champion. You were discussing a little bit what the picks had been like, and I want to know if there are any other picks that you would like to see besides the ones in this series, in this first game. Bertrand, anything you are missing here?
I mean, I think if you're going to be rotating a Sejuani like this, I want to see a more of a willingness to go into melee champions. You saw very, very safe picks coming out from the team on the left here. But what I'd rather see with picks like Sejuani is maybe going more into stuff like the Yasuo, stuff like the Yone. For example, instead we saw top lane Gnar, we saw Victor in mid lane. These guys were playing very heavy range, trying to get like a safe reset. But as a result, Sejuani was almost useless here. If you're going to pick that kind of a champ early, I'd rather see some more balls with the rest of your picks. You know, that's what I'd like to see more of. Ultimately, you're probably going to end up seeing a Mage Fest in mid lane, but I'd love to see some more melee on melee action, right?
Okay, Maguire, anything you would like to see again? Is this something that you agree with Veteran?
Yeah, I've definitely to double down on what veterans told us.
Okay.
looking at Detonation Focus Me game from yesterday, they've been picking a lot of those, Tryndamere, Yon champs alongside Sejuani, because you need some melee champs to make her work, and especially in later stages of the game, she needs someone else to follow her initiation to get down with the brass tacks against the enemy teams. But when it comes to the champions that I'm looking forward to seeing, something that's been picked up recently a couple of times is Varus, and I believe that into some of those champs like Draven, like Kalista, he can be a good pick because of his range, of his abilities, of his ability to actually, counter those aggressive, strong champs during the laning phase. And historically, he's one of my favorite champs to also watch and seen pro play. And I'm also wondering if some of the players will bring his AP build, because so far we've only seen the AD build, but you can definitely make a good argument for him picking, AP items like Nashor stuff, like others. So I'm really excited to seeing some more Varus throughout the tournament.
A poke-based ADC that can be flexed mid lane with AP options. Very, very Polish mid right there, MacGyver. Very Polish mid.
Oh, it's a pity that I can't just be like, oh yeah, very Spanish of them, because Spanish players here, so I'm sad. But I wanted to give a shout out to Viperin, because he hates Veigar with his soul and like everything's good. So I'm pretty sure he will be very happy if he's watching this. We love you, Vipe. But yeah, basically we're gonna be having an interview in a few minutes. I'm not gonna tell you with whom yet, but I think it's someone you both are gonna enjoy quite a lot. And now I also want to know one more thing before we go over to that, and it's we've talked about expectations, we've talked about the game, the picks and bans, but what else are you expecting out of them? What will you like? What do you think Hydras is missing right now in order to be a top team within the group A? Veteran.
Well, there was a moment around the third Infernal for them where you saw a very, very split fight. Veigar had an idea of what he wanted to do. Camilla had an idea of what she wanted to do. They all had very, very different ideas of what they wanted to do. And those were the parts where they felt like they could be vulnerable. I want to see some more cohesion around those neutral objectives. Just make the call. We turn here or we go for the objective, right? And everyone needs to be on board with either of those. Everyone having their own idea, this very anarchic way of doing things, it's not really going to work out in the competitive setting. So that's what I want to see them improve on.
Okay, so far we had the discipline as the good side of things, but maybe a little bit more like determination when going for objectives. And for you, Maguire, what do we think about it?
Something that I worry about is that those players are not as experienced as some of the others in the tournament. And you could probably make an argument that they will perform a little bit worse than the others when it comes to BO3s, BO5s, because this is the situation and this is the environment where you really need this experience, adaptability, and the players individually, you've just seen them play and they performed really, really well. You could make a point that all of those players actually, did quite well during the laning phase. Their mechanics were on point, but I worry that the team that has not played on the highest level yet for the longer time will lack the experience and will lack this most important virtue when it comes to the later parts of the tournament.
Oh, we have to remember that this is first game, so nothing is lost just yet. I know Lucent hasn't really shown up during this game, but they still have plenty of opportunities to do so again and make it as a top 2 of Group A. At the time, we start with a 1-0, which is without an 0-1, which is not the best, but I mean, you can recover from that. But we also need to think about the teams that are coming afterwards, because we're going to be watching GDXL and we're going to be watching Shell Esports, and we'll be able to compare how they are doing in comparison to these first 2 teams and see where they actually can be all together in the grand scheme of things. But something else that I wanted to discuss with you before the interview, once again, it's getting ready, so don't get impatient, which will be again, we've been discussing the experience of these players. Do you think, in this case, it's been showing for Hydras? Okay, we'll answer that question ourselves because we've got here Imperial from Hydras to answer some of our questions. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Hello. So
Hello.
first of all, congratulations for that first win for you guys versus Listening Sports. And yeah, I want to know, what are your feelings right now after this first victory?
I'm happy that we win, because a lot of analytics said that we will be last place or something like that we are underdogs. But I think that our team is really good. All our players is confident and great players. So I think we can do first or second place, and we will deal with it.
Okay. Any questions from you guys for Imperial right now?
Okay, so we've made this point on the analysis desk that you guys might not be experienced enough for the later parts of the tournament. Would you actually agree with us, or maybe you have another opinion or experience and you believe that you're good enough to make it further in the tournament against the top teams from NLC?
I mean, for my experience, I have enough experience and played 2 splits in LCL. I played versus really good players, so I know how to do this. About my team, yes, our mid laner is first split, and jungler don't play competitive a lot, but they're all players that want to improve and learning fast. So I think we can win any opportunity.
So, Imperial, do you see yourself as kind of a captain for the team, as the main focal point when it comes to, deciding on what to do in the game? How does it look from your perspective?
The coach staff give me the captain role of the team after tryouts, but in game I'm not the one who shot calling. Jungle and support shot calling a match too. So yes, I mean I do a lot of in shot calling, but I'm not the only one player who did this in team.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of questions about how you guys prep for this then. When it came to the drafts themselves, you guys pivoted very well into disengage, even with the MF as the opening. You were very, very disciplined with your MF ultimate. You're waiting for the Veigar cages. Selfway wasn't moving in. Did you plan this specifically for this team, or do you guys just plan playing your compositions out in isolation, right? We're really good at this kind of style. We want to do this kind of style.
I mean, we after our scrims we noticed that the team fight comps is the best comp for us in this meta, so we're
Gotcha.
always looking for something like this and stick to it if the picks like MF is open. So why not? It's
Good strategy.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions, Veteran, Maguire?
I think I'll just say congrats on the first win and good luck in the upcoming games, because JDXL, they're definitely a top team when it comes to the tournament, and I'm excited to see you fare up against them.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Imperial, thank you very much. Best of luck for your next games. We'll let you go to prepare for those. And for now, I think once they give me the okay, we're going to be tossing it to a break to get ready for the next game as well. High stakes at the time being. He's countered our argument about experience, but for now, we will have more time to discuss this when we come back from the break. See you soon. Bye.